Right, everybody, it is now the Western Alliance's counter-assault against the East, and this turn we are finally going to see some nukes. The Western Alliance has looked at the victory points and decided that it is time to authorize the use of nuclear weapons to stem the tide of the conflict and contain the ever-expanding Eastern Pact forces. So, getting into the combats right away, we have this one up here where the U.S. task force has moved up to Alaska, and they're actually in the adjacent sea zone right here. This one right here. And the guided missile destroyers are firing 2 nuclear cruise missiles at the Chinese fleet with the hope of knocking out, really hopefully the supercarrier, which a nuke will knock it out in one blow instead of 2. And maybe something like the LHD or the battlecruiser. So, getting in over here, we have the U.S. airborne on Guam are coming in to launch a desperate assault on Japan to attempt to knock out that MBT and infantry. We have 2 U.S. subs that have moved into the Sea of Japan and are firing 2 cruise missiles into Japan at hopes of softening up the target for the American airborne. Down here in the South Pacific, we have some pretty major action going on with the invasion of Papua New Guinea with 1 fighter and an airborne from Australia. And then over here we have a helicopter going on an anti-submarine patrol with a drone in support. And the big one, the Indian nuclear submarine down here that's lurking in the Antarctic is given authorization to fire its sub-launch ballistic missile at Southeast Asia with attempts or hopes of knocking out the Chinese Air Force, which is massed down there in defense of Southeast Asia. Now, with the launch of that missile, this submarine is removed from play. Coming over here, we have not much that the Pacific or the Allies can do about Africa, so they do have a submarine launching an attack or a cruise missile assault on South Africa to knock out the Iranian armored division that is down there. Over up north in Europe, we've got a massive Italian army marching into the Balkans to try and knock out the Russians up there. We have a combined arms armored assault on Western Europe, or Eastern Europe, with the Americans and British, along with the entirety of the British and NATO fleet sailing through the open Denmark Straits here, since 2 sides are controlled by different powers. They have launched a cruise missile from Germany into there. Their entire fleet, plus a fighter jet, is going to attempt to knock out the Russian Navy, and if the rounds pertaining can do so, they will deploy their infantry into Eastern Europe, and if not, those infantry will stay there. Coming down, we do have a helicopter on anti-sub patrols and a cruise missile being fired at the Caliphate Navy. And hopefully this round will mark the end of the Russian-aligned South American and now North American states, where the U.S. is launching an all-out assault on Mexico and Panama using air forces and cruise missiles, and this also marks the entirety of the U.S. forces in the Western Hemisphere, or at least on this side of the game board. So as you can see, there are no Americans anywhere else except for Central America. So hopefully those forces will end up taking out and liberating the American sphere of influence from the oppression of the East. Down here in purchases, we have got a mixed bag of American purchases, some more airborne, and they really need the land forces this turn. While they only have 1 transport on the board, 1 LHD to move units, they need a lot to send other places, like to push Europe and counter the Chinese invasion of Alaska. NATO has bought a couple more infantry to defend, a attack sub, which will hopefully be able to add to their fleet after the successful naval battle in the Baltic, and an airborne to push into Russia. Lastly, the Pacific Coalition will just be buying infantry to be placed in India, as it is extremely weakly defended. Lastly, for tech roles, nobody aligned anything, and for technology, there was a great deal this turn. The Americans got next generation MBTs. The Pacific Coalition got improved drones, although that might not be of huge use to them. But NATO was able to get improved cyber warfare, so now they are up to 7 cyber warfare points. So we'll have to see how they put those to work next turn. But right now I'm going to get into the combats, and I will show you the aftermath and see how effective those nuclear weapons are at taking out their targets. Alright everybody, now that combat is concluded, I can say that it was not a great turn for the Allies once again. There was only some small success made, but other than that, it was a pretty big failure, especially for one that was using nuclear, that had justifiably used nuclear arms that now have a retaliation coming. So there was one undeclared combat that I had, which was in North Korea. This was one of the only successes that they had, where North Korean combat only lasts 1 round and the defenders have a +2 bonus, but the Pacific Coalition, as you can see, moved into North Korea, took out 2 infantry and a fighter at the cost of 1 American infantry, so that was a pretty major success in thinning out North Korean forces there. But and then another success made down here in the Southeast Asia is that the Australian Airborne captured Papua New Guinea, and that was another IPC taken off the Chinese. Over here, the nuclear attack was semi-successful. It took out 3 infantry and a helicopter, along with 5 IPCs, as well as stalling those units that are stuck there. But they are. It didn't do too much to the Air Force. The Indians were able to take out a submarine down here in the Bay of Bengal. There was one thing that I wanted to do that I did not do yet. And I'll just roll it out right here. Those 2 attack subs that you can see on the task force are going to try to hunt down that ballistic sub at a 1, and they got a 1, so that takes out that Chinese ballistic sub. As you can see here, we have Chinese casualties from this turn. Another huge success, though, for the Allies was the recapture without any losses of Japan. The cruise missile took out an infantry, and the airborne knocked out that MBT, and the MBT scored no hits. So Japan is now liberated, and the Chinese have something to think about now. Do they push their assault in the Americas or come back to Japan? Over here, the biggest failure of this round was the US launching its cruise missiles, 2 nuclear cruise missiles at the Chinese fleet, and they hit absolutely nothing. So now the US fleet, which is kind of outmatched, sits there, or I would say, yeah, they are about equal fleets now. But the fact that now the Chinese get to strike back, and who knows, maybe their cruise missiles will actually find their targets. In other news, the European campaign went semi-decently. The Russian fleet is no more, and Eastern Europe, or Central Europe, was taken back. The Baltic states, we had the Russian next-gen MBTs forced to retreat after they knocked out 3 infantry in only 1 round at the cost of 1 MBT. And in the Americas, Mexico prevails once more. The Mexican army knocked out a infantry and an MBT. The American cruise missile did not hit Mexico either. So now the U.S., while they did take Panama, which Panama was the main enemy that had been on the U.S., the Panamanians took back Venezuela, so they've been a big thorn in the side of the Americans. So now that's secure. But the fact that Mexico is still around and still has an infantry in it and still can exert hurt on the Americans. So overall, pretty mixed bag. I would say that the Allies definitely have to pull some more punches, defend some more territories, because they are not looking good after this round. But first, or I guess we'll go into non-com and place units. So first with non-com, this fighter's coming back here to help defend the US. Over here in Europe, we've got an American fighter coming back to Germany, 2 NATO infantry moving up to Germany, a NATO fighter coming to Germany, as well as a drone going back to Italy, an American fighter, which needs a flight stand, is coming into Germany. Another American fighter from Central Europe is flying to Italy. This NATO attack helicopter is landing on this carrier here, so as well as this drone, hopefully to defend against that Russian sub. Let's see here. Oh, this fighter that participated in the Battle of the Baltic is landing on that LHD, and thinking about moving this guy in. He is in range of a cruise missile strike, so we'll keep him outside then. Nice and safe. And there's a frigate in the mid-Atlantic. It's sailing up 2 spaces to meet up, give that fleet carrier some escort. And I'm trying to decide if I think this NATO fighter is going to end up landing on that carrier because he can scramble out to any territory if need be. Alright. Getting into over in the Pacific Theater. Alright, so now a Chinese threat is mostly averted on India, which is nice, but I can probably see some nukes coming in next turn. So we don't want to defend that too much, but at the same time we don't want it to fall to the Caliphate either. This helicopter will be landing in India along with the drone. Actually, the drone will be coming to the super carrier. We don't want to lose that drone. As the we do have advanced drones too now with the Pacific Coalition. This fighter is landing on the carrier task force down here. I think that the task force is going to move up to the Sea of Celebs just to exert some more force, you know, encroach on the Chinese a bit more. That's just about it for the Pacific Coalition. I'm trying to think about like moving out of places like Taiwan, because there really isn't a threat now. They've got 2 airborne. Yeah, so for Taiwan, let's see, can we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yeah, so we're going to sea lift a Taiwanese infantry out of Taiwan and to India. South Korea, I think that, let's see, they are pretty much just going to sit as they will. Now, the Chinese can't threaten us with any air power either this turn because their entire air force is stuck in the nuclear fallout down south. Actually, and now that I see it too, this fleet is not going to come up here because it's adjacent to that airbase in the Philippines, which could fire a nuclear cruise missile. Alright. And getting over. So, I guess also from Taiwan, we have an American MBT that was there from last turn. He's going to set sail around and land in India as well. Actually, I don't know if I want him to be down there because it might get nuked. He's gonna set sail and actually come back to America. We'll just move over there. He's gonna come up to this friendly naval base here into Canada to help defend it against the Chinese threat up there. this MBT to, actually, we're going to sea lift this MBT up to Canada as well, along with an infantry. Let's throw in one. We'll rail another infantry into Canada from Mexico. And this fighter from the Hawaiian Islands, actually, we'll airlift an infantry, because the Chinese fleet could come 1, 2, and actually attack the U.S. So we're probably actually going to hang tight in the actual U.S. We'll leave this infantry here. We're going to fly this helicopter and drone to Canada. Along with that infantry, the infantry from California is going to get airlifted off screen to Guam to protect it again. And the Hawaiian Islands, while important, are not as important as the U.S., so this fighter is going to be recalled to the U.S., and this infantry is going to airlift, and he'll stay there for some extra defense. Actually, we're going to come to Midway too. He's going to sit there and defend Midway, because we have infantry that can be placed in Hawaii. Alright, getting into place units, we've got the Americans up first on the west coast. Some new airbornes going into America to exert power, or into California. We have another MBT going into the northwest United States. And actually that MBT is going to be moved, so he won't be going in there. And this MBT is actually going to drive to the other side of the United States. So that means that we have 3 infantry to build, and I really just kind of want them defending here, making sure that there's going to be no Chinese attacks up here. So now we've got 4 units in each territory. That's pretty nice. And actually one of them will be built in Hawaii to keep that somewhat safe from just a little random assault on it. Alright, getting to the west coast here. One of those tanks I mentioned is driving back, and we're building one down south. Again, no threat to the north, so I'm not super concerned about that. So we'll just be building our airbornes down here and an infantry in Venezuela to help defend that against any sneaky. And we'll do a tank down there, because I don't want the Russians, say, getting Panama, or getting like Peru and launching a little attack into Venezuela and taking it. All right, so off to the European theater and NATO. Alright, so NATO has a new attack sub that's going into the Baltic Sea, and it is using that naval base there to build it into the Baltic. We have a NATO airborne going into France, and a bunch more infantry. We'll have them all go. These tanks could go 1, 2, put one up in Germany. And that should be just about it. 1, 2, 3. Spain is... keep that guy in Spain. Oh, and another non-com is that Canadian infantry is going to move west and help defend their border. Alright. And getting into the Pacific Coalition, we already kind of did some non-combat movements. Lastly, this frigate's going to go 1 to 2 to here. And we have a bunch more infantry. Don't exactly know the count of it. It's about 4, 7, 8 infantry. And all 8 of these are going into India. Alright, and that is just about it for the Allies. Now we'll be going into turn 4 with the Eastern Pact. See you there. Cobra, out.